There seems to be a lot of confusion about how we got to this place where the land of Israel is actually called Israel. So my dad is going to talk about the different names of Israel along the way.
There's a definite progression of how we got from 2000 BC, around the time of Abraham in the Bible, to today, where the land of Israel is called Israel and also has an area that is called by many people Palestine. So, how did we get here? In the time of Abraham, and we're following the Bible here, but you can go on Wikipedia, go on any source you want and look these things up. There were 7 indigenous peoples that lived in the land that is today called Israel. Okay, they were the Canaanites, that was the largest of the groups. There were the Hittites, which were known from Egyptian writings to do battle with them all the time. The Hittites were a big force there. There were the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, who had the area around Jerusalem that David, the king, later ended up buying the temple area, and the Girgashites. That's 7 people. Now it's interesting. There's one people that's missing from this list that was nowhere in the Bible as part of, showing that they were indigenous people of the land, and that's the Philistines. The Philistines were Aegean raiders. They came out of Greece and Turkey and the islands of the Eastern Mediterranean, and they were basically the pirates of their day. They settled all along the coast from Lebanon down to Gaza, which was called Gaza in the Bible, and they had areas like Ashkelon and Gaza and the southwestern part of Israel, but they were never considered one of the indigenous peoples of the land. When Abraham first came there, around approximately 1900, 2000 BC, the peoples of the land who were there, and the land was basically referred to as Canaan, after the Canaanites. The land of Canaan, much, much, much later, was settled by Joshua and the tribes of Israel, the sons of Jacob, as Israel. And it became known as Israel because the son of Isaac was Yaakov, who became later known as Yisrael, and so became known as the land of Israel. Historically, much later, when the land was divided up into 2 pieces politically by the son of King Solomon and not an enemy, but a cohort of his in the north, it became known as Judah, Yehuda, after one of the tribes, Judah, and also as Yisrael. The south of Israel, around the area of Jerusalem, was called Yehuda, Judah, and the north was called Israel and sometimes took on the name of Samaria, Shomron. So we've had a progression from Canaan to Joshua's conquest when the 7 nations were conquered, and that is Yisrael, then to Judah and Israel. Much later on, when the temple was destroyed, the first temple was destroyed in Jerusalem, the forces of we call him in Hebrew Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylonia, when he came and made his major conquest and kicked the Jews out of the land from the area of the temple and others, and they took them to Babylonia for 70 years. They, at the time, had a major war, and they took on the Philistines, and the Philistines were basically genocidally destroyed. The Philistines have absolutely no reference in the Bible or by Josephus, the famous Roman writer, or others. From that point forward, there is no land of Philistia in the south of Israel. So how did the land get the name Palestine? The Romans, following the Bar Kokhba rebellion, approximately the year 132 of the modern era, were so upset by the rebellion of the Jews of Israel that they renamed the land. And the land was renamed Jerusalem was renamed Aelia Capitolina. Aelia is named after the Aelius clan, I believe, of Hadrian. And the country itself, they changed the name to punish the Jews, and it was literally a punishment. They named the country after the 2 greatest enemies the Jews had, and they called the name of the land Syria Philistia. Syria, why? Because the Assyrians had taken away the 10 tribes of the north in battle, and the Philistines, as you follow in what we call Tanakh in the Bible, in the latter half of the Bible, the Philistines were a constant thorn in the sides of the people of Israel. So they renamed the land Syria Palestina. The Romans prior to that had called it Judea. You can look this up, very simple. What did the Romans call the land of Israel? They called it Judea, then Syria Palestina, and then they shortened that just simply to Palestina. That name stuck for a long, long, long time. When the Ottoman Turks took over that area and held it until about World War I, the land took on some of their indigenous names, but the name Philistia partly still held. And when the British conquered that land and they took over, they called the area British Palestine, Palestine after Philistina. British Palestine is a geographic name. There was no indigenous people living in the land. There were no Philistines. There were no Arab groups that called themselves Philistines. There were no Canaanites. There were no Perizzites. There were Jebusites. There was nobody. There was nobody there under that name. In fact, during the British Mandate and even afterwards in 1948, after the land was split by the United Nations, if you were in that land and you needed a building permit, you went to Amman, Jordan. There was no capital in Jerusalem. There was no nothing. The Arabs who lived in the land, who were basically clans, descendants of clans of different tribes of Arabs, who lived all over the land. My mother was a Palestinian. It's on her passport because she was born in British Palestine in 1924. Okay? Anybody who lived there. The Philistines did not exist anymore. Okay? So it's very important to note that we went from Canaan to Israel, to Judah. We went to Judea under the Romans, to Philistina or Philistia, to Palestine under the British. Now you have Israel, because in 1948 the land was declared after the United Nations vote. It was declared as the land of Israel, Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, and the area on the West Bank and parts of Gaza where the Palestinians have made their own political names, they call their area Palestine. But all they're really doing is using the British name from World War I until 1948.